Greetings. This is Arvette McLean with Speak, The Universe Listens. New ways to view age-old challenges. Change your thoughts, change your life. Step into the bigness of you. Greetings and welcome to today's episode of Speak, the Universe Listens. Today's topic is life fair? And I have Teron joining me,
Hey.
Rodney, and Steven. How y'all doing?
Doing good.
Good. So, this is an interesting topic, and I feel like it's one that if we had callers calling in, it could get very heated very quickly. So, is life fair? I can't wait to hear everybody's perspectives on it. You want to start, Teron?
Oh, yeah, sure. So, growing up, one of my stepdad's favorite lines used to be like, life ain't fair, get over it. Like, legit would be anything. Like, pass me the remote, man, you right there. I don't care, life ain't fair, hand me the remote. Like, little things like that. So I grew up thinking like, hey, man, life ain't fair. But as I get older, I think life is fair. And I think that because the way I see the world is I think we all have the ability and the opportunity to create whatever reality we want. And so in that, the minute I acknowledge that you have the same power as me, then we can't be on any different level of a playing field because we are the same. So we're all connected to the source that is. And if I can do it, you can do it. So in my opinion, life is fair. I think we all have the opportunity to create whatever realities we want.
I mean, for me, I agree with you on that note. I think life is fair, and I think life is what we all make it to be. When I was younger, my dad used to, it's funny, my dad used to say the same thing, life isn't fair. My oldest brothers, life isn't fair, And I grew up with the mindset, life ain't fair. Then when things didn't happen the way that I wanted them to, I'm like, well, life ain't fair. But as I got older and a little bit more wiser, I realized that I can create the reality that I choose. So if I kept saying life is not fair, I was creating all the circumstances for it to be not fair. Mm-hmm. So when I realized that I can't create my own reality, that sort of made me shift my narrative a little bit on how I even viewed life, So now I look at it like it's fair. If somebody said, well, life ain't fair for me right now. Well, how you looking at it? What space are you coming from right now? So that's how I look at it. It's fair.
Yeah. Like my answer would be the same as y'all's. My answer would be life is what you make it. Like life is what you putting your focus on, and then I think about what that question is. What is fair? Like, what does that mean? Like, what is fair? Because I can feel like, hey, me and you do the same job, but I do it a little better. It ain't fair to me that we get paid the same thing. Like, I don't know what fair mean. Like, because I feel like fair can be different from all perspectives of what fair is. We can be looking at the same thing, and I think it ain't fair. He think it's fair, or you know what I mean? So I think it's just what you make it.
What you make it. Okay.
How you feel about it.
Okay. I would say, I know I talk to people on an everyday basis, in my field of work. And just talking to people while I'm working, and it's very interesting to hear people life stories. They just start talking and start venting, and I always get to hear all their problems. It's like they just start talking to me, and I'm just listening, and I'm like, wow. And they're like, well, life ain't fair, but hey, you gotta keep on going, or you got to keep on pushing. And when I listen to him, and I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, so if I was in your shoes, how would I possibly may feel the same way, I understand it, but I don't think that, I think that it's hard for people to get out of that narrative, because a lot of people are so used to, they want to feel what they feel.
And it's like if I'm looking at, if I'm living my life thinking, hey, it's never gonna be fair. That's just what it is. Then it's never gonna be fair. Like if I think, well, I'm never gonna get this opportunity because life just like that. Like it's just I'm never gonna be able to get this because life just like that. It's just it ain't fair. I'm not like, what is that? Like what's the end? Like what does that lead to? Like how are you living when you're thinking like that?
Well, I would say I will go back to a time in my life as to where I was on that same wavelength, you know what I'm saying? And think about, okay, where's that moment in my life as to where I realize I can create my circumstances, and I think for anybody, even for the viewers out there, if you are in the mindset of, or in the current moment as to where you're looking at life it's not fair for you, think about what you're telling yourself at that very moment. If you're saying life is not fair, what do you think that you're bringing into your life at that moment? More unfairness. So if you want to bring in more abundance, you want to get out of that mindset of lack, sadness, then you will have to create that joy, that happiness, that positivity to bring that in. And can it be challenging? Yes. It can be challenging. It can be very challenging.
I would say, like, if somebody's thinking, well, life isn't fair, and if they can't get out of that, like if that's just how they want to see it, I would say, okay, well, what is fair to you? What would your life look like if life was fair? And I would say just keep your focus on that. Think about that a lot. Like what would your life be if you felt it was fair, or if you felt it was how it was supposed to be? What would that look like? And keep your focus on that and keep visualizing that.
Okay. So for you guys, like, what was it in your life? Like, what was that moment for everybody as to where you sit back and you looked at life in a different light as to where you got over the hump of life isn't fair?
For me, it might have been right after I graduated college or whatever. I got a job and I joined the organization, and they ended up closing like within like 9 months. And all I could think at that time in the beginning was like, man, it ain't fair. Like, this is my first job out of college, and now here we are, I'm getting laid off. And then to double on top of that, I really felt like it wasn't fair because the organization was bought by somebody else, and everybody else got a job except me. It was only myself and the CEO. Like, the only two people that were not able to transfer over, myself and the CEO. So, at 22, like, I'm like, my first job, life ain't fair. I'm laid off, here I am. And it was just, I don't know, it's like I just had to make a decision in that moment, like, all right, I don't want to feel this way anymore. And I know I'll be all right. Like, and every time I felt like I was going to be all right, something would just keep coming up to like show I was going to be all right. So I remember like, oh, I don't know where the money's going to come from. And then I was like, yeah, I'll be all right. A week later, they called me like, hey, you want to just come in and like just break down some boxes? We don't have much money, but we have enough to continue to pay you until the box is gone. So I'm like, yeah, I'll do that, whatever. Then I remember when the boxes got almost gone, I was like, now I don't know what I'm gonna do. This life ain't fair again.
You got no more boxes to bring
No more boxes to break down. That's it, man. We can get rid of all the paper. But another opportunity opened up, and I just remember, I don't know, it was just that decision of, well, everything that I want, I can create, and it was a step back, Teron, and know that you are protected and nothing is happening against you right now. Like, I lost my job, but I also still went on vacation the next week. So like nothing changed and nothing stopped. So the minute I stopped looking at it like that was a negative, and I stopped looking at it like, oh, woe is me, was the minute things started to pick up again on that front of it.
What about you, Rod?
I'm trying to think back to that space. Like, I ain't being funny, but I don't think like that no more. So it's hard for me to like
get
take
back in.
myself there.
Okay. Yeah.
But I'm sure it's something I can think of.
So
I don't have it right on top of my head.
the life ain't fair scene also reminds me of another one that I've always heard, especially being black. You know, you got to work twice as hard to get half as much, and you know. I think we did an episode. Well, we did an episode before about changing like what random things like that mean to us now. And so now when I hear that phrase, it's like, well, no, I just get an opportunity to become that much better at my craft than the next person does because I'm spending that much more time on it than the next person is. So it's like I'm never gonna view it as a down moment. I'm never gonna view it as, oh, I'm working this hard to get there, or I gotta do twice as much to get there. Well, one, I know I don't have to do twice as much, but two, if I do choose to do it, I know that I'm getting twice the amount of rewards the minute I step back and I view everything that I picked up on that journey as a reward versus just seeing it as the paycheck is the big ticket.
So I don't know if I might say last week. Well, for one thing, what I want to say, one of the things I want to say is, I oftentimes hear people say, I have the favor of the Lord, or I have favor. And that comment would just burn me up. Like,
Really?
what would make you think you got favor with God? Like,
You could be like, they God's child. Yeah.
you know, like, no, you ain't got nothing over me. Like, you know, like, what makes you so special that you get favor or whatever? So that's a comment that burns me up. But like, in terms of is life fair, like, a lot of times I would think about, okay, well, what about people who, like, for example, I have a lot of free time. And so when you have a lot of free time, you can think about things, you can be creative, you can read, you can explore. You just have more time to elevate and evolve in certain ways, like intentionally so. When I used to work 24/7 around the clock, I ain't had time for all that. So it would be like, how is that fair that a person who has to struggle, how is that fair? That first of all, that they have to struggle? Or how about somebody that's in a, you know, war-ridden society, or someone who is a survivor of genocide, or someone who lost their child tragically, or, you know, like, how is that fair? And so I had a hard time, I guess, kind of figuring that out. And I think for like people like the general population, it was easy for me to see how life is fair with the general population, even in the face of being an African American. And, you know, like, I would look at my babies and I'm just like, oh my gosh, they got to work so hard just to get to the start line. And but then when I look at how they flourish, I'm like, it's a good thing, you know, because they would have ran that race so fast or whatever. But so the whole idea is life fair. I really couldn't see it as being fair. And even in the face of things that you've said, like realizing, okay, we're all divine, we all have this power, da 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 da. But if you're in a space where you don't have the opportunity or the time or the focus to focus on your power, then how is that fair? But then when I take it a step higher, and when I say, I'm saying higher, but I don't really mean like something is better or like that. But when I take it to another level, and I realize, okay, we're part of divinity. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be changed. When we came, or I guess at some point we're spirit, and then we decide to come into the human form. So I don't know if God is saying you go there, you go there, you go there, or if we get to choose, because we are a part of God, right?
Right.
So then we chose what experience that we're having. And in the face of eternity, like we're eternal beings, this human body is almost like how we change clothes, right? So in the face of eternity, this 100 years that we're in this human body is like a blink of an eye. So it's almost like, okay, when I come in this time, I want to wear a gown. And then I'll go back out, I change clothes, and I come back in and I'm wearing, overalls or whatever. So when I look at it more like that, that we all had the opportunity to come in and try whatever experiences we wanted in the human form, then things seem so different to me. Even like the whole idea of dying, like why would you be afraid of dying? Like I never understood why people are afraid of dying anyway, because we always talk about going to heaven. Now if you think you're going the opposite way,
I want to stay a little longer.
But if you're thinking, okay, I'm going to heaven and everything's wonderful there, why were we afraid to die? And so I say all this to say energy cannot be destroyed. So even if my beloved child is taken from me it's always going to be too soon for your child, right?
Yeah.
But your beloved child is taken from you too soon, and you're just like, how is this fair? Especially, most of the time it's going to be tragic anyway, but especially with tragedy, like if it's like they got shot or something just unthinkable, how is that fair? But when I think about, okay, well, this child chose to come into this world, to have certain experiences, probably to do some teaching while here, probably here to teach me how to evolve into my next stage. This is happening for me, no matter how horrific it looks, and it's helping me to step into my own power. And I think that's what we all have the opportunity to do, no matter where we started, is we had the opportunity to step into our own power, to remember that we are connected to divine, remember that we are whole and complete as we are. We already have everything we want. We already are it now. And I think when you have the hardest situations to overcome, when you step into your power, it's gonna be and oftentimes people with the hardest situations step into their power sooner and easier than people with easier situations.
Trying to say, well, I can add to that.
Yeah.
Telling you always come through and just clean it up.
It's pretty good.
I think in that space though, when my brother passed away, my mindset was like, life ain't fair. Life ain't fair. Just because I was coming more from, why did this have to happen? Could've, would've, should've, just running through my mindset. And I think now it's more like you question it a little bit, like, is it fair? Is it fair? And I look at it as to where could things possibly be different? Who knows? But for the most part, anybody that's coming from a tragic type of space, how to deal with something like that. Life ain't fair. I would say, if anything, don't really look at the negative, the sad part about it. Not saying that's something that is going to be like easy, because it's not. But You made me think about what you were just talking about. You made me think about, who's scared to die. Like I was at one time, and then I realized, hey, eventually we all gonna go, because this is the 3D. So why would I be scared? Why would I be scared? But the main thing is just not focusing on the bad of what you got going on in the situation. Focus on the good. And somebody would say, well, what is the good in a situation that is tragic? Okay, well, one, I would say it's going to transform you. And you probably were in a space as to where you've been wanting to do something, you've been wanting to change, but it had to take something drastic in order for you to make that big, huge leap. And for myself, that was one of those circumstances. It had something tragic had to happen for me in order for me to make that leap, doing words of wisdom, actually speaking to people, and actually just stepping into my power of who I really want to be as a person. So, yeah.
I think that kind of took me to my point that I feel like with the life isn't fair thing, I feel like self-love plays a huge part in it, because if you have tragedy or all these things that can happen, it's like, well, am I okay? Do I love myself enough where I'm okay that these things happen? And am I able to, I feel like when you got that self-love, you can appreciate the things that happen and appreciate that, hey, this happened for me, not to me, and I'm okay.
And with that self-love too, I would say, if we were to think about, okay, instead of something drastic happening in your life, and that has to be the key thing to make you change, well, if you know that, if you are aware of that, right, well, how can we change that narrative? Why wait for something, bad to happen to you in order for you to just go ahead and, live your life the way that you see fit? So for me, it was just one of those circumstances. I had to experience the tragic in order to live my life the way that I wanted to live my life. But I don't think that people have to go through something drastic in order to be who they are or be where they want to be.
Thank you for saying that, because so many people they say stuff like that all the time, you had to go through this in order for this, and I'm just like, no, I don't serve that type of God. He gonna give me the worst thing in order for me to grow. No, you can just tap me and tell me,
Exactly.
I learned from your mistake. I don't need it to happen to me.
Exactly.
People are all like a underdog story.
Yeah.
I came from this and got here. I feel like we appreciate that more. More than somewhere where we feel like hey, I went through this. This made me this path was better than just getting it handed to me.
Right.
And we feel like, well, they got that handed to them, so it ain't the same as this. But it's like, and I was having this conversation, and I was talking to somebody, and they like, oh, yeah, because my lowest point, you ain't never been where my lowest point was. And I'm like, I said, so how did you feel at your lowest point? And they said, I felt like I wanted to kill myself. I said, so why does I said, no matter the situation that's happening, at this person's lowest point, they probably could feel like they wanted to kill themselves too. But the things that was happening was totally different. This person may be rich and feeling like that, and you were wherever you were, you know what I mean? So it's basically what I'm saying is you don't have to appreciate the struggle and that's better than this path,
You don't have to sit back and you don't have to struggle in order to live the life that you want to live or be happy, you know. And I think that's something that, even for myself, that I think I grew up off of that at one
Yeah,
time.
we all did.
That's
Most of
all,
us.
That's all that I heard was like, you know, you got to struggle in order to get the things that you want. You got to hit the hard times and
Can't sleep.
yeah, you know, so forth. And I heard that, but it's like that thought was in my mind, right? And then it created that emotion for me. And now I memorized it. So now that I memorize it, this is my program. And that's all that I know. So it took a while for me to deprogram that thought process and start filling my mind with like, I don't need to struggle. You know, I don't need to sit back and be in a space of lack, and you know, I can be happy. You know, why do I need to be sad for?
Right.
And I think that's the challenge for a lot of people. How can they get over, you know, that hump of that thought process?
And I do want to say, like, a lot of times I hear, like, when something bad or negative, somebody perceives as negative happens, it's like, don't focus on that, focus on the good. So it's almost like some people get the message of pretend like the bad thing didn't happen, or stuff that somewhere. Don't pay attention to that. Don't get at your energy. Give the good your energy. But that's not that's not what you want to do. That's not what you want to do. Basically, you want to elevate your consciousness to where you are. This is good, or this feels good to you. Because really, there's no right and wrong, bad or good. It's just whatever label you put on it, however you feel about it. And so if you're feeling bad, then you want to elevate yourself to a place where you feel good, whether it's changing what you think about that thing, or you can just elevate yourself to just a different place, period, where that pain no longer exists. So it's not like pretending like, you know, I'm gonna ignore it and hope it go away. It's not that. It's literally changing how you were thinking about that thing, or you can elevate yourself to a whole different consciousness where that thing does not exist.
Yeah, and I think just to piggyback on that, I think I used to struggle with that early on, which is why I started teaching myself to, well, let's try and find one good thing about what's happening that we enjoy, and then let's go from there, because that makes sure I'm never ignoring what's happening. I'm acknowledging what's happening, but I'm also finding, all right, but no, I'm okay with this because I like this part of it, or I like that part of it. And yeah, this part is happening, but if that's just a little minor inconvenience and all I gotta do is focus my energy here and it's all the same, then yeah.
I think for me was like, one thing I can say is when I was, and even now, if I'm experiencing something, whether it can be, you know, a dislike or it may be a bad situation, I'm frustrated, I'm just gonna feel those emotions. I'd rather feel it instead of sitting back, putting it to the side. Like somebody would say, Steve, all you gotta do is think positive. All right, so let me go ahead and put these emotions to the side, and then maybe next week, what's gonna happen? They're gonna arouse right back up, you know, and I'm gonna revisit that. So I would rather deal with it. And when I say deal with it, it's not a bad thing. I just want to feel it out, because I think that when you feel out what you're feeling, whether it's good or bad, you feel those emotions, you experience those emotions, and then you just release it. And then you ain't gonna go back to revisiting it. And I think some of the times when we try to think positive, we'll sit back and put our feelings and emotions at that current moment. We'll set them to the side. And then as soon as you set them to the side, they're never going nowhere, because what's gonna happen is something's gonna trigger you later on, and it's gonna bring those same emotions right back that you didn't want to deal with then or feel, you know. So it's like this revolving cycle. So for me, and I would say for anybody, feel what you feel, let it out, you know, experience it, and then go forward.
Or, or you can change your thinking about the thing. And the thing does not have to be a bad thing. Like you can elevate how you're thinking about it. And as we've said several times, is recognize it's happening for you. You change the whole experience of it when you're like, okay, this is for me. And if you can find just one possible way that this is for you, that kind of helps you. Yeah. and with like our very words creates. And so if we're saying this is bad, this is negative, this is terrible, then that's the experience. And if we're saying this, okay, all right, this happening for me, all right, well then let me get excited. Let me start getting excited about what's good going to come out of this, and then it will change the experience as well. All right.
Look at everybody like, all right.
Yeah, so yeah, give it some thought in terms of, is life fair? Because I really can't think of, like for me, when I think of God and divinity and, you know, all, like why would God make somebody better than me or put them in a better position than me? It's like, really, if we're saying, is it fair? It's like we're saying there's something outside of us that gets to determine what's happening with us. And even though I know that's how we've lived our lives, like we'll say, okay, well, the government, you know, my job, school, like everything, you know, outside of us to this point have been the things that kind of govern our lives. But we are able to take our power back by really tapping into who we really are, tapping into our divinity. And from that space, all things become possible for us. And like a lot of times, again, we might say, well, how can a person who's experienced X, Y, and Z do blank? But has anybody that's experienced X, Y, and Z done it? And if one person can do it, that's just proof that it can be done. All right. Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
Thank you for joining us. And we look forward to chatting with you again next week. Until then, this is Arvette.
This is Steve.
Right.
It's Ron.
Bye.